This video is sponsored by Skillshare.
What's up, folks? Noah, the vaguely hipstery artist guy here. I've got art in my blood. I've always got a million projects going on at once across many different mediums. And for someone like me, Skillshare is a lifesaver.
Skillshare is an online learning community with classes on music production, illustration, creative writing, even businessy stuff like marketing and web development. You can further your skills in just about any creative medium on Skillshare. Classes usually take about an hour and include both a video lesson and a hands-on assignment. There are thousands of classes to choose from, and when you join, you get unlimited access to the entire learning community and every single class. Skillshare is an incredible resource for artists of all types,
And that includes my type, photographer. I want to take awesome pictures, but I still don't know what all these buttons and dials do.
so I'm thinking of taking Fundamentals of DSLR Photography with Justin Bridges, a multi-part series on shooting basics. New classes are being added all the time. You can tailor the entire experience to fit your creative desires and schedule.
And you ready for the real zinger here? The first 1,000 people to click the link down in the description will get a free 1-month trial of Skillshare Premium. So check it out today! And if you'll excuse me, I just brought home a gorgeous meatball sub, and the lighting in the dining room is just incredible right now. The world needs to see this.
Through the hoop!
Hello there, my friends. I'm here on my unscripted video back. No, I'm not. That's not my unscripted video background. That's my green screen. Man, I forgot to move it. I don't want to move it. It takes 2 people to move it. I'm not moving it. I'm not moving it today. Okay, new plan. Kane, put something really cool back there. Something really cool and awesome. Thank you. All right, what are we talking about? It's the Switch. It's the sales thing. Okay, so the question of how many units the Switch will ultimately sell has been with us for a very long time now. The Switch had a really good launch, a super strong launch. But even then, even at the time, we did not know if it was possible for it to overtake the Wii in lifetime sales. The Wii was just such a big success, we really weren't sure. And we were still coming off the Wii U. The Wii U was such a dramatic failure that we didn't want to be too confident, you know? We didn't want to be too cocky.
Ever since launch, though, the outlook has only gotten better and better. Like, sales for the Switch have just increased year on year for the last 4 years. And then, of course, last year, everything changed. Everything changed. The Switch sold so much last year, last fiscal year. I mean, like, basically, it got about a third of the way through that goal of 101 million to match the Wii in 1 year. In 1 year. Almost a third of it. So we're at this point now where, like, okay, like, we were already pretty sure before 2020 that it probably had a really good chance of beating the Wii. Now we're 100% sure. Just absolutely 100% sure. It's at 89 million. It's still selling. Definitely, absolutely, which is awesome, obviously. Especially when you consider that, like, the Wii did really well, but its growth was not the best. It peaked after, like, 2 years, and then it did nothing but drop after that, whereas the Switch, it is maintaining interest. We're more than halfway through its life, and it's still selling really well.
But, the question still remains. How far will it go? What will that number look like at the end of the Switch's life? And, do you think it can beat the PS2? Is it possible? Is it feasible at all for the Switch to go on to be the #1 best-selling video game console of all time, beating the PS2, which currently has 155 million? The DS is sitting just below it at 154. The Nintendo almost had the #1 selling console. They were so close, but the PS2 is still the reigning champ. Can Nintendo possibly do it? Well, this is something I've been thinking about an awful lot, which is, you know, why I'm talking about it here. So first off, let's go over some of the things that the Switch has going against it, at least in terms of the idea of it being the best-selling thing ever. Well, one thing is that we have definitely, I mean, I'm willing to bet money on it, we have seen the Switch's peak. Last year was the peak. It might have been the peak under normal circumstances, but then the pandemic and everything and Animal Crossing, it kind of, it created a thing, a little microcosm of sales that spiked the Switch like crazy. I do not think we're gonna see that again. I don't think there's any reason to believe that we will see that happening again. I do feel that it's pretty much only downhill from here. The sales can remain strong, you know, for the next few years, still sell a lot, but
it's peaked. It is over the hill. It's going downhill now. And part of that is because we have already seen all of the big titles. Nintendo has played all of their biggest cards. We got the Zelda and the Mario, the system selling stuff, the Smash, the Pokemon. You know, like, people will continue to buy Switches, but like, in terms of software that drives hardware, we might not get another big, massive hit again. We might be at the end. They've used up all of their big tentpole IPs. I mean, this is why we're seeing stories coming out of, analysts telling everybody to sell their stocks in Nintendo now because, like, that peak has ended. The lightning in a bottle is getting out. And people who are only concerned about, the number sides of things, they might want to get out now. That stock value might go down a little bit. It's not going to crash or anything, but, it will go down. It's going to go down. It is a natural part of a system's life cycle, completely natural, and it's just kind of the reality that we're facing right now. On the other hand, the Switch has a lot going for it. I would say that, like, the main thing that the Switch has going for it is the thing that the Switch has going for it. I mean, like, in general. Like, the main reason to believe that the Switch will continue to sell well is the reason that it has been selling in the first place. It is just a really great console, and its reach is very, very wide. It is hitting a very wide audience. Different systems appeal to different demographics, and you have something like the Wii where it sold really well, but it mostly sold to casuals, people who didn't return before. I've talked about this a lot. The Switch is a really healthy system. It's not just hitting the core Nintendo fans, it's hitting everybody. It's getting the kids who hadn't been with Nintendo systems in a while or ever. It's appealing to core players and casual players alike. It really, like, its potential audience is like the world. It's a really, really great, really accessible system. And part of the reason that that is true is that the library is super duper duper strong. I know people are gonna have, their individual complaints about different things. Oh, Pokemon is stale. Zelda Breath of the Wild wasn't really a good, Mario shouldn't have been sandboxed, whatever. It really doesn't matter because when you're talking about just like commercial viability, right now the Switch has it. It probably has the strongest, most commercially appealing library of any Nintendo system ever. The library that it already has, like, that library is moving systems and moving them like crazy. The games aren't moving systems because the system lets you shake a thing like it's a golf club and that, like, no, it's because the games are awesome and people want to play these games. The handheld thing, it's novelty, but that's only because you have people who already want to be playing games. There are so many people out there who want Switches, and they just haven't yet, because that potential is so huge. The reach is so wide, we're gonna continue to see those people just roll in over the next few years. And another thing to consider is that Nintendo still has not lowered the price. They kinda lowered the price with the Lite. They offered an option that was $100 cheaper. So in a sense, it was sort of like a price drop in its own sort of way, but not the core model, the core switching model, the thing that most people are probably gonna wanna have. They've not lowered the price. And that idea of lowering the price, that's still on the table. Nintendo hasn't even touched the price yet. And like, they might not want to. I know, like, Nintendo's whole thing, they like to make money on the consoles. Other companies, they don't mind making a really powerful console, selling it at a slight loss or even breaking even because they know they're gonna make money on the games that sell on the platform, and they have a lot of third parties, so that's fine. Nintendo has such a healthy system, such a healthy platform, that they can probably afford to do the same thing. And I definitely lean that way. I'm in the way of, like, get it in people's hands. Like, you want to make money on the system itself. How much money are you losing out on? Those people that think it's too expensive, but would spend hundreds and hundreds on games if they did have it. That library is so strong, any Switch in a person's hands is gonna equate to a lot of money. So they might not want to necessarily do that. I know, like, with the 3DS, they wanted to introduce new models, but most of the new ones, they kind of upped the price of those and then lowered the price of the previous ones. So it's kind of like lowering the price. Kind of not. We don't know if they will, but that is on the table. If Nintendo decides we want to do it, we want to have the best-selling console ever, they could lower the price. They absolutely could. And I feel like if they were aggressive with that price, we'd see a massive spike in sales. And even if they don't do that, we still have the concept of Nintendo Selects. That is something that we have not had yet. We've had that with basically every other system, but we haven't with Switch because it's just been selling so well. People are buying Breath of the Wild and Mario Kart and all that stuff at full price for so long. But that's another card up Nintendo's sleeve for when sales start to kind of, you know, slow down a bit. Hey, look at that. Now you can get a bunch of the best-selling Switch games for 20 bucks. I predict it'll probably be 30 bucks if they ever do if they do Nintendo Selects again. I bet you they'll be 30. But that's not the point. Cheaper games, they can do that too. So really, we don't know what will happen, and we can try to predict what Nintendo will do, what the numbers will end up being like. All we can really do is kind of look at past systems and kind of compare the Switch to those. It's hard to compare it to the Wii because that, again, it reached such a different audience, and that was just such a long time ago that you can't even really compare the two anymore. It's probably better to compare it to the 3DS. It's more similar, it's got the handheld format. We're gonna get more like new versions of it. It's a little bit newer than the Wii. So let's look at the 3DS. The 3DS had its rocky start, obviously, because the price was just ridiculous, but then Nintendo lowered the price and then started putting out great games, so then it had a really big spike for a couple years there. 2013 was a really good year. That was when they released the 2DS, which was much, much cheaper than the base model, so that might have helped with sales, but we don't really know because it was also kind of weird and kind of unappealing to certain demographics in certain ways, so I'm not really sure there. Then we got the new 3DS XL in 2014, basically the ultimate version of the 3DS, and again, we're not really 100% sure how much it helped. Because the sales were really good that year, but they were really good the previous year too. It's possible that the sales would have been less, but it kind of helped prevent a bigger drop. So, you know, it helped more than we can kind of see. Who really knows? But then, this is pretty noticeable. The new 2DS XL in 2017, that caused a noticeable bump. That defeated the downward trend and gave us a little upward bump. And if you look at the graph, you imagine that bump is probably more substantial, again, than it looks because it probably helped fight off a drop. Imagine that this might have been even lower than the previous year and it bumped it up to that point and even further from there. So that probably did it. That was kind of like, okay, we had the new 3DS XL, but now we got the 2DS one. It's a lot cheaper. A lot of people don't care about the 3D. For a lot of people, that was the jumping on point for the 3DS. That was the swan song of the 3DS, get the last people on board. Because then after that, like, you know, the 3DS had a good couple years, but then as the Switch grew, the 3DS dropped off. And as we know, 3DS software sales were not very strong. And eventually Nintendo, you know, gave it the axe. Now, the Switch has already had its 2DS, essentially. That's what the Lite was. And we really don't know what else Nintendo has planned for it. We don't know what other models we might end up getting. And it could be that Nintendo did plan on doing a big, like, more powerful Switch Pro, like basically the Switch's equivalent of the new 3DS XL, new 2DS and all that stuff. And maybe it won't happen now because of the pandemic. Maybe this will go on for years and it'll be too hard for companies to get the parts necessary to push out a bunch of new products. If the new 3DS and 2DS models really helped keep the 3DS alive for a couple extra years, then the Switch not having that, that could impact things. And looking at the end of the 3DS's life, that does lead us to another potential issue. As a console gets older, it becomes less exciting. The closer we get to a new console coming out, the more people might be like, yeah, maybe I'll just wait and get that new one instead, especially if we have something like with the Switch. The Switch 2 or whatever it is will probably be backwards compatible, whereas the 3DS to the Switch, there wasn't even a backwards compatibility issue there. But software sales tanked so hard that it's clear that it's just less exciting. People are less interested in even playing the thing anymore. And a lot of us are getting kind of tired of the Switch's inability to run certain games well enough. So if we don't get some sort of Switch Pro, some sort of upgraded hardware model, then that could really contribute to people just kind of feeling done with it, you know? The tech is already so old. I mean, it's so old. I mean, by the time the next system's gonna come around, which could just be in about 3 years here, then like that graphics tech is gonna be 20 years old. Like basically Xbox 360 level games are still playing those 20 years later. People are gonna want an upgrade. But let's get down to it. Let's get down to some actual numbers here. Let's start imagining how far the Switch might go. If it's at 89 million right now and we want it to hit 155 million, and if the thing's got 3 more years of life in it, then that means it's got to hit like at least 20 million sales, like a little bit more than 20 million sales per year for the next 3 years. And that's a lot. That's probably asking probably a little bit too much. But the Switch might sell for a few years into the life of the next system, and so you kind of pick up some of the numbers there. But overall, I would say because we're going to see a downward trend here, and because we're not really sure if Nintendo is going to be able to do a big hardware refresh like they might have wanted to, it's not looking great. It's not looking great for that 155. Obviously, still going to be really great overall, but you know, if we're talking pure numbers, pure record-breaking numbers, I am not super duper confident that it's gonna beat the PS2. I don't see it happening. Okay, so here we go. Here's the thing. Here's the big thing. Here is my guess. You want to know what I think's gonna happen? I'm gonna do a little predicting for you here. This is what's gonna happen. The next 3 years until the Switch 2 or whatever comes out, all right? This fiscal year, 18 million. A definite drop over last year, but still very strong, still plenty of interest in the Switch. Then next year, 14, following the predictable downward trend, but still pretty darn strong. Maybe that's when games finally start to get a little cheaper. We get some Nintendo Selects or something, who knows? After that, interest in the next-gen system is going up very, very quickly. Maybe we've even seen the next-gen system, and we're all just kind of waiting for it. But it still has a good year. It's maybe there's been a price drop or something by then. It's still a really good system with a lot of good games on it. 8 million. The next year, the next-gen system is officially out, but it's really hard to get your hands on it, so Switch has only a very small drop, and it's helped tremendously by some sort of thing, another line of selects or another price drop or another cheaper model or something. So we go from 8 million to this year, 7 million. Still a drop, but still pretty darn good. Next year, interest is dying down. People are really getting to the new thing. 3 million, and then finally we get its final year, 1 million, maybe less than 1 million. It's like the 3DS's final year. It's just kind of, people are just kind of done. They've moved on. So it's gonna go 18, 14, 8, 7, 3, 1, and the Switch will end its life with a grand total of 140 million sales. A little bit below PS2 and DS. Still the 3rd highest selling console of all time. That's what's gonna happen. So there you go. What do you think? Do you think the Switch could go on to be the best-selling console of all time? Or just like a really, good, solid, awesomely selling console? Or do you think that sales will inexplicably just drop off a cliff and it'll only sell 1 million more units for the whole rest of its life? Just the whole rest of like the next 3 years, just 1 million units. It goes from like 33 million to 1 million. I mean, it's not like super likely, but I'll hear your argument. I'll hear whatever you have to say. Let me know down in the comments. I love you. I want to squish your little face. I love it so much. I hope the stuff on the green screen has been really cool. Just awesome. Just like really cool. Just really cool, awesome stuff, I'm sure. And not a joke. No, this was not just me setting up a joke for Kane where I say I want it cool, but then he puts something silly. No. I'm serious. I'm always serious. No jokes! Ah!